This is Frontline on Air. Major stories on the go.
The Saint, the Song and the Social Revolution. A new music project titled Anbenum Peruveli radically reinterprets the work of the 19th century Tamil poet-prophet in the year of his bicentenary, Abhirami Girija Sriram.
First, you hear a drum roll. Then the crash and clang of cymbals, like the rev-up before a rock concert. The camera arcs over a signature scrawled in a sort of cursive Tamil, Chidambaram Ramalingam. Lines of a poem, a mystic paean to love, appear with subtitles on the screen to the heartbeat of the drums, intercut with visuals of what looks like a jamming session in a studio. Now, silence and birdsong. As you wonder about the poem, the camera cuts to the flame of a lone earthen lamp. And then emerges the image of a monk in white robes, hands clasped, face inscrutable. Born Ramalingam on October 5th, 1823, near Chidambaram, Tamil Nadu, this man would come to be known in the Tamil world as Vallalar, the magnanimous one. Thus opens the documentary on a music album named Anbenum Peruveli, The Grand Expanse Called Love, which radically reimagines Vallalar's poetry in the year of his bicentenary. Anbenum Peruveli is a collection of 6 audio NFTs, non-fungible tokens, secured on the blockchain, commissioned by the blockchain technologist Vignesh Sundaresan and conceptualized by the Singapore-based non-profit One My Foundation. A hive mind of artists and scholars have deep dived into the life and work of Vallalar, who famously wrote, "Vaadiya pairai kandapodellam vaadinen." Whenever I saw crops wilting, I too withered. And for whom Jiva Karunyam, or compassion for all sentient beings, was equal to the worship of God. The earthen lamp, with its steady burning flame, speaks for this poet-prophet's way of life, in which light, he called it Arutperum Jyoti, the great light of compassion, and love, or Tanipperum Karunai, infinite mercy, were the enduring truths. Vallalar is often acknowledged as the first popular poet of modern Tamil. Tamil's own bard, Subramanya Bharati, hailed him as Pudiya Velippin Munnodi, the pioneer of a new awakening. In his essay titled Love in the Time of Hate, the writer and journalist A.S. Paneerselvan notes, quote, "There are 5 critical elements in Vallalar's work: simplicity, lyricism, compassion, seeking the truth, and finally, refraining from being a literal interpreter of any of the earlier texts." It was a major departure from the militant Shaivism that held sway from the days of the later Cholas, and it created the space for multiple coexistences of faith, traditions, and ways of life. Unquote. The 6th Tirumurai. Vallalar's disciples published his verses as 6 books, or Tirumurais, which were later compiled into the Tiruvarutpa, or Songs of Grace. While the first 5 Tirumurais bear the stamp of the Tamil Shaiva Siddhanta Bhakti tradition, the tide turns in the last one. The 6th Tirumurai mirrors the mind of a man who has broken free of caste to feed the poor and the hungry at a time of famine. It is a clean break from religion and ritual, an open embrace of the idea of Anbe Sivam. Love is God, God is love. It was not published in Vallalar's own lifetime for fear of a backlash. Like the 6th Tirumurai, the Anbenum Peruveli project too is a departure from the usual format of an art project. At its heart are 6 verses selected by Paneerselvan from Vallalar's vast oeuvre of 5,818 songs. These have been set to music by Sean Roldan and sung by leading Carnatic vocalist Sanjay Subramanian, who is accompanied by Vikram Vivekanand on the guitar, Shalini Mohan on the bass, and Ramkumar Kanakarajan on the drums. The 6 songs are a splendid jukebox of genres: fusion, rock, heavy metal, jazz, Celtic blues, rap, styles and moods, prayerful, affirmative, upbeat, reflective, playful, anthem-like, and swing from the familiar to the funky. A bonus is the inclusion of a string section by the Celtic Folk Ensemble, recorded at Abbey Road Studio, London, and the Skopje Studio Orchestra, North Macedonia. In Sean Roldan's musical interpretation, Vallalar's verses feel intimate and immediate, relatable and personal, burning and political. Here is 19th century poetry that speaks to the 21st century listener, music that allows the poetic expressions to emerge with clarity and ardor. The documentary and 6 music videos directed by the filmmaker Rafiq Ismail and shot by the cinematographer Karthik Muthukumar add another facet to Anbenum Peruveli. While the documentary captures the camaraderie and the buzz of a live music studio during the recording of the 6 songs, it is much more than mere making-of footage. Embedded in the narrative are conversations with Tamil scholars and historians who shine a light on Vallalar's life and work and reflect on how his belief system broke out of the traditional Shaiva Siddhanta template to an expansive worldview born out of empathy and fellow feeling. Among the speakers is Professor V. Arasu, former head of Department of Tamil, Madras University, and scholar of the Dravidian movement, who sketches a brief biography of Vallalar and his growing up years. He points out how in the Manumurai Kandavasagam, 1854, a prose rendition of the 12th century Shaivite epic Periyapuranam, Vallalar spells out the injustices of the British Raj using the persona of King Manunidi Cholan, giving us an insight not only into the society of his time, but also how deeply he cared for the world around him. For Vallalar, 1867 was a milestone year, says Professor Arasu. That was when the first 4 books of the Thiruvarutpa were published, thanks to the efforts of his prime disciple, Tozhuvur Velayuda Mudaliyar. It was also when the Samarasa Veda Sanmarga Sangam, a society based on the principle of universal brotherhood, and the Satya Dharma Salai, a charitable feeding house in Vadalur, Tamil Nadu, were established. The Anaya Adupu, the hearth that never dies out, that Vallalar lit for cooking at the Satya Dharma Salai, continues to burn to this day, feeding hundreds of people, irrespective of caste and creed. The folklorist M.D. Muthukumaraswamy highlights how the late 19th century was a time of Tamil Renaissance, which seeded both the Indian nationalist movement and the Dravidian movement. Professor K.R. Arumugam draws attention to the twin defining moments of that period: the Great Famine of 1876-78 and the evolution of print culture. While his contemporaries vied with one another to give their holy books pride of place in print, Vallalar chose to focus his energies on tackling Pasippini, the sickness of hunger, instead. He declared that Jiva Karunyam would be his only religion henceforth. The historian A.R. Venkatajalapati observes that this act of Vallalar's was both a radical revolution of the heart and a revolt by a Shaiva Siddhanta insider. The coming out. The documentary sets up an interesting parallel between Vallalar's breaking free and Sanjay Subramanian's own musical crossover. The first song of the Anbenum Peruveli album is from the 5th Tirumurai. Orumayudan ninadu Tirumalaradi ninaikindra uttamartham uravu vendum. Let me keep company with the noble ones who single-mindedly contemplate thy flower-like feet. This verse, usually sung in Carnatic music concerts in a worshipful tone, feels more a wish list in the soundscape created by Sean Roldan. As Sanjay Subramanian finishes each stanza with the earnest refrain of Vendum, Vendum, I wish, I want, violin surging, drums in a rhythmic groove, a familiar hymn breaks fresh ground. Sanjay Subramanian can sound like a live wire in one song, Arut Perum Jodi, with its heavy metal vibe, and sweetly poignant in another, Kallarkum Katravarkum Kalipparulum Kalippe, joy for the unlettered and the learned alike. There is a particular point in Anjade Nenje, Fear Not, Dear Heart, which begins with a tinkling, lilting lute on the pentatonic scale, when the chords shift and his voice soars into a whole new sky. He even croons a la Frank Sinatra in Vennilave, O Milk White Moon. But it is in Idu Nalla Tarunam, the time to do good is now, that he lets go. Structured as rap, its lyrics, Marida Samaya Mada Valakkellam Maindadu, Varnashramam Yenum Mayakkamum Saindadu. The old ways of religion are gone, the illusion of Varnashrama has fallen, are a rap on the knuckles of orthodoxy. With an urgent, electric vibe, the rendition and lyrics both promise a thought revolution. When we discussed this project with Vanmai, I said, I don't mind doing anything, but I will be a singer. Whatever you want, I'll sing, said Sanjay Subramanian to Frontline, referring to his coming out of the Carnatic classical comfort zone. As for the music videos, it is as if artists picked up a flaming torch from musicians in a cultural relay of sorts to create a collage of enduring visuals. When the dancer Ruchi Ravindran twirls, dervish-like, her hands lifted heavenwards, to the chorus of Vendum, Vendum in the Kerala countryside, the song Orumayudan takes on a lapidary quality. The painter Adivira Pandyan creates a many-splendored abstract painting from scratch to the riffs of Enniyal Udambile, Enbile, Anbile, in my body, my bones, my love, that rise to a crescendo in Arutperum Jyoti. If Anjade Nenje opens a window into the daily practice of the theatre artists of Puducherry Repertory Company, Indian Ostrom, the dancer Nritya Pillai brings Kallarkum Katravarkum with its stirring Celtic chorus to life in the zen-like calm of Marudam Farm School in Tiruvannamalai. The breeziness of Vennilave belies its profound philosophy. Satchidananda kadalile nanum taarndu veera vendukinren Vennilave. I wish to delve into the sea of spiritual bliss, O Milky White Moon, even as Ramamurthi's surreal animation conjures up whole new worlds in a handful of frames. Idu Nalla Tarunam becomes an anthem for the power of now, as Kishore and his troupe of dancers perform the crump in the stark salt flats of Marakkanam. Anbenum Peruveli is a palimpsest built on the words and ideas of a man who walked the talk, a saint and social reformer who was rooted in the real world. As Paneer Selvan says, the 6 songs collectively make for a modern manifesto or desiderata for our times. As he also points out, none of the food politics and welfarism of successive governments in Tamil Nadu over the last century would have come about if not for Vallalar. In her book, The Transformation of Tamil Religion, Ramalinga Swamigal, 1823 to 1874, and Modern Dravidian Sainthood, Srilata Raman notes, quote, this profound empathy for the poor and the hungry is considered to be Vallalar's lasting legacy to the Tamil people, unquote. She traces how Vallalar became a secular, anti-caste icon of the Dravidian movement. Quote, the self-respecters placed Vallalar within a progressive Tamil teleology, one which far removed from the superstitions of religion would point the way to a utopian, humanistic society, undergirded by Paguttarivu, that is rationality, and created through social reform, unquote. The Viduthalai Siruthaigal Katchi leader Tol Tirumavalavan sums it up when he says that Vallalar was the one to sow the first seed of Tamil modernity, and the one who preached and practiced all that Ambedkar and Periyar envisaged at least half a century before they did. In an inspired turn of phrase, Tirumavalavan declares Vallalar the Anmiga, spiritual Periyar. And that, perhaps, is the best testament to an ascetic activist who chose the path of Jyoti, light, and Samanidhi, equality, over Sadi, caste.
This is Frontline on Air. Major stories on the go.